Now, before we get into today's video, I want you all to click the link below and join my email list right now. There's a whole lot of great content that I want to send to you, but YouTube doesn't let me show you. Must be systemic racism. They deleted a bunch of our videos, but that will not stop me from telling you the truth. So join my email list right now. The link is in the description. So I'm at CPAC in Dallas, and guess who I run into? Thomas Homan, the former acting ICE director under the Trump administration. He and I start talking, and I asked him about immigration, and I said, I understand we've got like 2 million people in the country illegally since Biden has been in office, and about 1 million of them are gotaways. How do you count gotaways when they got away? He said, well, there's a way of doing it. We check this, we check that, we check that. He said, but there's another several hundred thousands. There is no interaction. We can't track them. We have no idea who they are, where they are, what they are. Might be another 400, 500,000. So I post the picture of Mr. Homan and me on my various IG platforms. And by the way, follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, on IG, and on Truth Social. And I decided I wanted to make sure I got his title correctly, so I looked it up on Wikipedia. And I saw this entry. Look at this. Thomas Douglas Homan is a former police officer, government official, and real piece of garbage who served during the Trump administration. Wikipedia is referring to somebody as a real piece of garbage? I thought they were an objective encyclopedia that just kind of described things without any kind of partisan point of view. A real piece of garbage? Let's turn to the Mar-A-Lago search. According to the Wall Street Journal, the FBI recovered 11 classified documents in the Trump search. 11 classified documents because the warrant was released and the inventory list was released. Took 20 boxes of items, binders, photographs, a handwritten note, and the executive grant of clemency for Trump for his ally, Roger Stone. Also included in the list was information about the president of France, for whatever reason. 3-page list. Now, here is what Chuck Schumer once said about what happens when you insult the intelligence community. Quote, let me tell you, you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, Trump is being really dumb to do this, end of quote. That's when Trump said something negative about the intel community. And again, here you have a Democrat senator, Chuck Schumer, saying, are you kidding? Don't you cheese off the intel community. They will exact revenge on you. That's one of the reasons why a lot of people feel we've got a problem here. And the problem is a double standard. I'll get to that in just a second. Now, the federal magistrate, his name is Judge Bruce Reinhart, who approved the warrant, contributed money to Barack Obama and to Jeb Bush. It is not uncommon for judges to contribute money. If every judge who contributes money should recuse himself or herself from the case, we wouldn't have any judges. So that's not the problem. The problem is he slammed Donald Trump on social media. Trump said something that was perceived as negative about John Lewis, the civil rights quote-unquote icon. Never mind John Lewis referred to President Trump as illegitimate, does not believe that he was properly elected. Never mind John Lewis did not attend Donald Trump's inaugural. So Trump said something that was perceived as negative about John Lewis. I don't even recall what it was. But here is what Reinhart said on Twitter. Quote, I generally ignore the president-elect's tweets, but not this one. John Lewis arguably has done more to make America great than any living citizen. Last August, I took my son to the Edmund Pettus Bridge. That's where Bloody Selma took place. So he could understand the kind of courage and sacrifice required to live in a democratic society. John Lewis embodies that spirit. Although I never met him, said Judge Reinhart, he's one of my heroes. Thank you, Robert Reich. Robert Reich was a labor secretary under Bill Clinton, and he attacked President-elect Trump for what he said about John Lewis. Thank you, Robert Reich, for saying what many of us feel. John Lewis is the conscience of America, says Reinhart. Donald Trump doesn't have the moral stature to kiss John Lewis's feet. Or as Joseph Welch said to Joseph McCarthy, at long last, have you left no sense of decency, end of quote, said Judge Reinhardt in his social media post about President-elect Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't have the moral stature to kiss John Lewis's feet? And you don't think that's a problem? That this is a judge who granted the warrant? And you add to that he contributed to Barack Obama? And you don't think there's an appearance of bias here? An appearance that just maybe he might not be the kind of person who would be fairly and objectively evaluating an affidavit in order to grant a warrant? Now, there were a number of people supposedly on the right. I say supposedly because I believe a lot of these are false flags, where people on the left will pretend to be people on the right and say some stupid stuff so that people on the right look bad. I don't doubt that a lot of people on the right said negative things about Judge Reinhardt. I'm just saying I wouldn't take it to the bank that every single thing that was said negatively was said by somebody on the right. Let's assume that they were. I condemn the anti-Semitic attacks on Judge Bruce Reinhardt. I just wish the same kind of condemnation was leveled against the people who on social media made attacks against Justice Clarence Thomas. He was called Uncle Tom, not just by some whack job, some troll on social media. He was called Uncle Tom by Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th committee. I repeat, Benny Thompson, the chair of the January 6th committee, referred to a justice of the Supreme Court, an associate justice of the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, as an Uncle Tom. Any outcry? Any repercussions? Any apology? And so far, to my knowledge, not a single Fox host or contributor, these are people who are paid to give their opinion on Fox News, not a single one, although many have been critical of Judge Bruce Reinhardt, not a single one, to my knowledge, has said anything even remotely anti-Semitic about Reinhardt. However, on MSNBC that I watched, so you don't have to, Joy Reid referred to Justice Clarence Thomas as Uncle Clarence. Clearly a racial, bigoted slur. No condemnation, no repercussions, no apology. But first, you know I never leave home without my MyPillow. Squish, squish, squish. I sleep on it at night, which is why I have such energy in the morning, which is why I'm able to do all of this, by the way, without a teleprompter. We don't need no stinking teleprompter in the Larry Elder Show. And go to MyPillow.com, or you can call the number on your screen, and it's not just My Pillows. They got my slipper. They got my towels. They've got a mattress topper. You ought to see my house. Top to bottom, my house is filled with MyPillow products, and yours should be too. So go to MyPillow.com. You'll find over 100 items. Did I mention the MyPillow slippers? No, I don't have a pair on right now. If I did, I'd be sleeping. MyPillow comes in different sizes, and the towels come in different colors, and the sheets come in different colors. MyPillow.com, or call the number on your screen and you tell them the great Eldersky sent you. We'll be right back. Now let's talk a little bit about two-tier justice, shall we? Sandy Berger, who was the former National Security Advisor under Bill Clinton, of course Hillary Clinton, and Eric Holder, the Attorney General under Barack Obama. Now the FBI claims that Trump likely, or that there's probable cause, that's the standard to get a warrant, probable cause that Trump violated a section of the Espionage Act pertaining to classified information, another statute talking about the removal of government records, another statute pertaining to the destruction of these government records. Usually disputes between former presidents who take stuff and the National Archives or the relevant government entities that claim the president shouldn't have taken them, they work it out. And in this case, my understanding is that they had been working things out, and all of a sudden, a discussion just completely stopped. Now, let's talk about Hillary first. Hillary, as you know, was accused of violating the Espionage Act because she had a private server in her basement on which she sent and received classified information. Initially, she said she never sent or received any information that was classified. Turned out that was wrong. And then she amended it and said, I never sent or received any information that was stamped classified. Turned out that was wrong. So she lied publicly. It's not illegal to lie to the public, but she lied publicly. Now, James Comey does his big presentation where he outlines all the stuff that she did. Said that she was careless. Said she was reckless. The statute only requires you to have engaged in gross negligence. It does not require intent. Assume you've had too many drinks at a bar. You get behind the wheel of your car and you kill somebody. Did you have the intent to kill somebody? Of course not. Intent is assumed because of your grossly negligent behavior. That's the same kind of thing here. These are top secret documents, national security. So let's suppose you have some top secret documents. You go to a bar, have a couple of pops, and you leave the documents at the bar. You have now broken the Espionage Act. Did you intend to leave the documents? You did not. But did you engage in gross negligence? Yes, you did. So Comey goes through a long, detailed list of all the things Hillary did by having the server, the possibility that the server might have been hacked, the likelihood that the emails to whom she sent other people had been intercepted, and the possibility that sources and methods could have been revealed, people could have been killed. Comey outlines all of that. At the last minute, he says, but no reasonable prosecutor would have prosecuted her because she lacked the intent. One more time, intent is not a requirement of the statute. You know Charles Krauthammer, the late Charles Krauthammer? Even people on the left thought that he was fair, disciplined, articulate, scholarly. Here is what he said about what James Comey said in not holding Hillary accountable because Hillary lacked the intent. Quote, "This is baffling. Under statute 18 U.S.C. section 793F, it is a felony to mishandle classified information, either intentionally or through gross negligence. The evidence, as outlined by Comey, is overwhelming." End of quote. Yet Hillary skated. There is a former U.S. attorney named Andrew McCarthy. He's also a Fox News contributor. But again, straight guy, down the middle. Often he checks some of the other hosts and pundits on Fox and says, well, actually, here's what's going on. So he's not some wild-eyed incendiary who is marching behind Donald Trump, irrespective of what Donald Trump says or does. Here's what McCarthy said about what Comey said in holding Hillary not accountable. Quote, "The question," said Andrew McCarthy, "is whether she knew classified information would end up on her server. Her setup made that inevitable. Clinton could have been prosecuted either for willfully mishandling classified info or for doing so through gross negligence." End of quote. Yet Hillary skated. There's a guy named Peter Van Buren, 24-year veteran of the State Department. Here's what Van Buren wrote, quote, "While Comey maintains there was no intent or gross negligence by Clinton to violate the law, it is difficult to reconcile her actions with his statement. The standards applied in the Clinton case are at variance with how classified information violations elsewhere in the government are handled." End of quote. Yet Hillary skated. Harvard's Alan Dershowitz, again, voted twice for Barack Obama, a self-described lefty. Here's what he said, and I'm quoting, "Berger," talking about Sandy Berger. Let me pause and get back to that for a second. Sandy Berger was a national security advisor under Bill Clinton. Congress was conducting hearings about the run-up to 9/11, and the question was whether or not Bill Clinton might have known about things that, had he taken the appropriate action, might have stopped 9/11 from happening. So Sandy Berger is Bill Clinton's national security advisor, and he was summoned to testify. So he went to the National Archives, presumably to prepare for his testimony. The man put documents in his pants. I kid you not. Walked out of them, got caught, and apparently destroyed at least 3 documents. We're not even sure because he destroyed them. What happened to Sandy Berger? Well, he got fined administratively. He was put on probation for, I think, 3 years. He temporarily lost his national security clearance, and that's about it. Here's a guy who's stealing documents out of the National Archives, destroying them, and essentially got kid glove treatment. So he was a man to whom Alan Dershowitz referred to in the statement I'm going to read now. Berger was administratively fined, and Mrs. Clinton was rebuked by James Comey, then director of the FBI, which might have cost her the 2016 election. But neither was subjected to broad search warrants or criminal prosecution. Now, there's still a lot we don't know about the underlying affidavit on which Judge Reinhardt granted the warrant. All we know is that Sandy Berger was treated differently, and that brings us to Lois Lerner. Lois Lerner was the head of the tax-exempt section of the IRS, and when charities that were conservative filed for tax-exempt status, she held up their applications. There was a subpoena issued by Congress. She ignored it. Ultimately, she took the fifth. She was allowed to end her career at the IRS. She is now living in a suburban house, collecting her suburban pension, never any kind of criminal prosecution, let alone ever had been subjected to the kind of search warrant that Trump was at Mar-A-Lago. Now that brings us to Eric Holder and Fast and Furious. Fast and Furious was some sort of, it's called a gun walking scheme, where the government allowed illegal guns to leave the country, go to the border. The idea presumably was to track where they are so we could bust the cartels that were purchasing these guns. The guns ended up in the hands of people on both sides of the border. They lost track of the guns, and at least one of them was used to kill a Border Patrol agent. So Congress subpoenaed records about Fast and Furious from the then AG, Eric Holder. Eric Holder defied the subpoena, became the first and only sitting AG to be found in criminal contempt of Congress. He was sued, and an Obama-appointed judge basically allowed both sides to go back and forth to negotiate and turn over the documents. And little by little, the AG turned over some of the documents. Finally, the documents were all turned over 5 years later. I repeat, 5 years later. And Donald Trump's been out of the White House, what, a year and a half? So Eric Holder was allowed to take 5 years before turning over documents, even though he was found in criminal contempt of Congress. And Jason Chaffetz, who was in the House at the time, to this day does not believe all the documents were turned over. And Eric Holder, one time, by the way, referred to himself as Obama's wingman. Not the AG for the country, but Obama's wingman. So Lois Lerner, nothing happened to her. Sandy Berger, slap on the wrist. Hillary Clinton, nothing happened to her, even though clearly she violated the Espionage Act, because the Espionage Act, as I said repeatedly, did not require intent. And Eric Holder is now with a law firm, I think it's called Steptoe and Johnson, probably making about $4 or $5 million a year, living large. So you wonder why so many of us feel that there are two-tiered systems of justice. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the next outrage, and that is the death of Salman Rushdie. Hope you enjoyed that video. The full show is available to watch right now on Epoch TV. Just click the link in the description below to learn more, because we've got a country to save.